Hi everybody, and welcome to another one of my video tutorials. My name is Marcel Lupo and I am a Cloud Solutions and DevOps Architect and Microsoft DevOps MVP. Today I decided to create another tutorial on a new code space that I've been working on. Let me just quickly talk about the previous video and what we did. So in a previous demo, I basically created a code space or dev container that would, when you spin up the code space, it would kind of attach a self-hosted GitHub Actions runner within that code space that you can then utilize to run your GitHub Actions and workflows using the compute power of the code space by utilizing a self-hosted GitHub runner within that code space. Now, what I did recently was I created another code space, another dev container, and basically in this dev container, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running a Azure DevOps pipeline agent within a code space. So what we're going to do essentially is we're going to have a Azure DevOps project that is linked with a GitHub Git repository to run Azure DevOps pipelines. But what we are going to do is we're going to create a code space within our repository that is going to act as our Azure DevOps pipelines agent. And this is a publicly available code space that I've been working on and publishing as part of the Dev2 and GitHub hackathon. So I thought I'd make a quick video tutorial on how to utilize this code space within your own environment. So first of all, let me just quickly jump into GitHub so that you can go to my GitHub account under Dev Container Templates, and under the source directory there is more information on how to use the Azure Pipelines agent dev container on this page. It gives all the instructions on how to set up and use this code space. But for this tutorial, we're going to do this all from the beginning, from start to end. So I'm going to navigate to Azure DevOps here real quick. And what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new project. And I'm just going to call this project GitHub Codespaces demo, and we could just say running Azure Pipelines via GitHub Codespaces. We can make that private, and I'm just going to use the Agile workflow, and I'm just going to create this project. So this Azure DevOps project is going to be basically an empty project. Now, what I'm going to do next is I've kind of already created my agent. Well, what I'll do is I'll create an agent pool. We can call this pool, let's say it's going to be a self-hosted agent pool, and we can call this GitHub Codespaces pool. So let's call that GitHub Codespaces pool. And this is basically, this agent pool is where we're going to register our GitHub Codespaces as Azure DevOps pipeline agents. So we've created our project and our pool. And let me just quickly jump back into the project. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to GitHub here, and I'm going to create a new repository. And we're going to create this repository. We can call it, let's call that GitHub Codespaces demo repo. And we can make that a public repo, add a README file, we could just do an MIT license. That's not a big problem. Don't have to add a git ignore file. So let's create this repository here real quick. So at the moment, we don't really have much in this repository, but what I will do is I'm just going to press dot just to go into this running Visual Studio Code in my web browser, just to quickly go into this repository. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this Azure Pipelines. And within here, we can create a hello world YAML file. And this is going to be our Azure DevOps pipeline. Now I've already got a bit of code here that I'm just going to paste in. It's basically going to run a Azure DevOps multi-stage YAML pipeline. But remember, we created our pool, our GitHub Codespaces pool was called GitHub Codespaces pool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change my pool name to GitHub Codespaces pool, and it's going to run hello world and also give me the name of the host name that is going to be running this codespace. So I'm just going to do this first commit into my repo. And I'm just going to push that up into the master branch. Now if we go back and refresh the page, we'll see that we've got our Azure pipelines in here. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to kind of link our repository. Well, first of all, let's create some, we're going to need to create a few things to basically register our code space with Azure DevOps. So the first thing that we will do is we're going to create some code space secrets. So under the repository settings, we can go to secrets and variables, and we'll go to code spaces. Now we're going to need to create 3 repository secrets. The first repository secret is going to be called ADO_org, and what we're going to do is we're going to use our org name for Azure DevOps. So in my case, the org is called Magic Onion M. So I'm just going to put that in here. That's my first secret. The second secret that we're going to use is going to be called ADO_pool_name. Now, we called our pool name GitHub Codespaces pool. So we're going to add that as a secret. And the last secret that we're going to need is a personal access or a PAT token. And the variable for that, or the secret, is called ADO_PAT. So just navigating back to Azure DevOps, what we're going to do is we're going to create under our personal access tokens, we're going to create, I already have a Codespaces agent registration token here, but I'll create a new one so that we can take a look at what permissions are required. And it's basically just agent pools read and manage. So what we're just going to do a new token, and I'm going to call this Codespaces or Codespace agent registration token 2. And I'm just going to make this valid for 30 days at the moment. And the only access that I'm going to give this, going to click on all scopes, and the only access that I need to give this this access token is basically the agent pools read and manage. So I'm going to create that token, and I'm just going to copy this token here and put it into my GitHub secrets. There we go. So these are the only 3 kind of secrets that we need. Now, the next thing that we need to do is link our, so this repository here has got a, a pipeline in here called hello world. So what we need to do next is link this pipeline with our Azure DevOps project. So we'll just jump back to Azure DevOps and go to our project, and under pipelines, we will just go and create pipeline, and we're going to select GitHub. And then what will happen is it might ask us to log into GitHub at this point, but I've already logged in. So you'll see here is my GitHub Codespaces demo repo that contains this Azure DevOps pipeline with the pool name that I'm going to run this pipeline on. So I'm going to link this repo, and I'm going to say I want an existing YAML file, and you'll see here that it picks up the Azure Pipelines Hello World YAML file in here. So I'm just going to continue, and you can see here that my trigger is on master, and it's going to basically run Hello World and give me the host name of the machine that this pipeline is going to be running on, or the compute space that this pipeline is going to be running on. I don't want to run that just yet, so I'm just going to save that for now. And that is going to create my pipeline. Now the question is, you're probably thinking is, well, we don't have any Azure DevOps self-hosted agents for this pipeline. If we go back to the code here, you'll see here that we're not using the Azure hosted pipelines image. We're kind of saying use an agent that is within our GitHub Codespaces pool. But if we go to our, if we go to our Codespaces pool, our agent pools for self-hosted runners, you'll see here that we don't have any agents. We need to kind of deploy an agent first. Now, this is where the codespace that I've created comes in. So what we can do, or what we'll do, is we're going to go into our repository, back to the root of our repository, and we're just going to go and create a codespace on master. And this is just going to create a plain GitHub hosted codespace. But what I want to do is I want to show you something, how we're going to change this to use the codespace that I've created. So once this is loaded up, what we're going to do is under Codespaces at the bottom left-hand corner here, if I click on that, I'm going to add dev container configuration files. I'm going to select this option, and then I'm going to create a new configuration. From that new configuration, I'm going to say, show me all the definitions, and the codespace or dev container that you're looking for is going to be called Azure Pipelines Agent, which is by PWD 9000 ML, which is me. So I'm going to select this pipeline. I'm just going to use Bullseye as the default, and I can select what version of the Azure DevOps Pipeline Agent I want. So by default, it's going to use 2.218.1. I can then install extra stuff that I want, like Terraform or any tooling that I want extra within this container. But I'm just going to leave it at that. Just press OK on that. And what this has done now is it's created a dev container folder with my configuration and the script. I'm just going to commit this. I'm just going to say added codespace. So going to sync that up. And then I'm just going to go back and delete the running codespace, because we're going to now create a codespace based on the container that I've just been talking about. And this is where these secrets are going to come in handy, because when this codespace is going to basically spin up, it's going to send out the org name, the PAT token, and the pool name, and basically register the codespace with our Azure DevOps pool as an agent. So let's do that next. So under the repository, I'm going to go to Codespaces, and I'm going to create a configure a new dev container with options. And in here, I'm going to say I want the master branch. And you'll see here that it's got my Azure Pipelines dev configuration. I'm going to select Europe 2. Now, here is where we can select the compute space of our self-hosted, of our code space, which is going to be our self-hosted agent. And I'm going to make this a 8-core, 16 gig RAM with 64 gig storage. I'm going to create that as my code space. Now, what is happening here as part of this code space is it's basically going to as the code space is building, it's going to download an Azure DevOps self-hosted agent using that version that we picked, which was 2.218.1, and it's going to register this code space as a self-hosted runner within our Azure DevOps pool. So we can actually have a look at the logs here, and we can see how this is all, what's happening in the background, how it's building the dev container. And the first time this builds it takes a little bit of time, but once the container is built, every time you spin up the container, it's basically going to be quite quick. So I'm just going to pause the video here, and we'll come back once this process has finished. And the code space has now finished building. So as you can see, we've got our repo, and if I quickly go into the Bash console here, I can go and type hostname, and we'll see that the host name is called Codespaces-1E5A7F. And this is that 16-core, that 8-core VM that we built, that code space, that compute space. But on top of this compute, or on top of this code space now, if we go to Azure DevOps, to our agent pools, to our project and go to our agent pool, you'll see that we now have a self-hosted agent, and you'll see that the name of the agent is the same as the host name, Codespaces-1E5A7F, and appended with ADO agent. So our code space is now actually a Azure DevOps pipeline agent that is idle and ready for taking jobs. So let's jump back to our pipelines, and then let's run our pipeline. By kicking off this pipeline, we can see that if we go back to our agent pool, this is now running our job. So within this code space, this code space's compute power, we're basically running our pipeline. So if I just quickly go into that job, and we can see this will start running in just a moment. So we can see that our hello world is run, and the host name is run. So if we go back to that Azure DevOps pipeline, we can see here that this pipeline ran on our pool. It echoed hello world, and it gave us the host name, which is the same as the host name of this code space, as you can see here. And that's basically it. That's now we can create more pipelines, and that will basically run as part of our code space. We can actually rename our code space in here and we can call it Azure or ADO, and maybe give it like the project name that this is linked to, which is called GitHub Codespaces demo. So that way, when we know that this code space is active, we know that our if we go to our pipeline, to our agent pool here, we've got an active agent ready kind of for taking jobs. So just to show you, actually, like I can go and if I just come out of this code space, I can go and stop this code space, which will basically turn the compute power off in the background. This is basically a compute space that's hosted on GitHub. by turning that off. And as you can see there, our Codespace is now offline, and we can pretty much, if we want to go into this Codespace, we could just turn this back on by just going and opening. We can open it on Visual Studio Code or wherever, but let's just open this in the browser. And this is going to start up our Codespace again. And as we can see, our Codespace is now back online. And if we go back to our Azure DevOps pipeline, our Azure DevOps pool, we'll see that our Codespace is back online. Alrighty, now just to clean up all of this, what I'm going to do is just go and to the repository, and then what I can do is just delete this Codespace, and I'll just delete this agent. And that's it. We've successfully created our DevOps project with a GitHub repository hosting our Azure DevOps pipelines, as well as a Codespace that can act as our self-hosted Azure Pipelines agent. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. And enjoy. I mean, this Codespace is publicly available for anyone to use. Again, you could just go into your Codespaces and select the Azure Pipelines agent. So there is as well on my GitHub page, there's also the dev container templates, and you can basically find these public Codespaces under source. There's one for GitHub Actions GitHub Actions Runner, where we basically create a self-hosted Actions Runner within a Codespace, or the tutorial that I just covered here, which is part of the hackathon, where you can actually run a pipelines agent inside of a Codespace. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed this and have a great day or evening. Thank you.